good to have you with us on this edition of the Urban Debate. Viewers, for the past 24 hours, our team has been looking into the new education policy, the national education policy that's been approved by the government. Now, this is after 34 years. The last revamp that was done was in 1986 during Rajiv Gandhi government's time. So, obviously, there is a lot of catching up to do. From primary to secondary to college, from use of technology to the examination system, to the fee structures, to the language of instruction, to the kind of syllabus, the kind of education it should be, to the spending on education. This comprehensive policy is going to decide how our education system evolves over the next several years. I must point out, these are not decisions that will happen overnight. Essentially, what are we talking about? The contours of this education policy will change the whole system of our schooling and college across the country. The idea by the center is to look at a more holistic approach for education, not just about memorizing. सिर्फ रट्टा मारने वाली बात नहीं होनी चाहिए. The policy actually is being seen as a milestone. Of course, a lot will depend on how it gets implemented. But the idea and the vision is to also step up this country's spending on education and to take it up to 6% of our GDP. To me, that's one of the big takeaways if we actually follow up on it. For far too long, we have been saying here that our spending on education and on healthcare is abysmal. So this is one of the proposals. There is also an interesting concept about how to change your board system. That one big overarching deciding factor in every student's life. Whether you do well in your board exams, that one chance that you get or you don't, and how it decides your future. Let's now sit and break it down here tonight and talk about the good, the bad, and perhaps the ugly and the avoidable in this policy. We've got a whole host of experts who will be joining us. Let me just take you to 10 pointers that I want to specifically highlight here in no order of preference. But these are the things you need to know. One interesting clause where we will seek more clarity is the one about emphasis on regional language, mother tongue, local language as the medium of instruction till grade 5th, if not till grade 8th. Does that mean that the state governments will have the choice? Does it mean it's mandatory? Does it mean that the medium of instruction has to be written and or just verbal? Something that we will seek answers to. 10 plus 2 structure as it stands today for classes will now be broken into 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. I will explain to you what it means over the next 40 minutes, so stay on with me. The undergraduate degree can either be of 3-year duration or 4-year duration. This is an important point. There are some WhatsApp forwards doing the rounds that say that any degree course will now be 4 years. There are some finer details and nuances to it, so don't just go by that WhatsApp forward. MPhil courses will be discontinued under the new policy. School curriculum will be reduced to core concepts, a more holistic learning. There will be integration of vocational education from class 6. The idea being that when a student graduates from school, they actually have a skill they can use in life. They acquire a new skill, a more vocational based education system. There is also a lot about the fee regulatory structure and setting up that framework. Then e-courses will be developed in regional languages. A lot of proposals when it comes to use of technology as well. Multiple entry and exit points to enable return to studies is an interesting concept as well. Single regulator for all higher education institutions. Many say this is good. Others are not very convinced with this idea of a single regulator. They say this just enables one entity to just push by with everything. We'll talk about it. So without wasting any further time, let's say good evening to those who are joining us right now. I've got Dr. Ram Shankar Kuril, member of the National Education Policy Drafting Committee, joining us this evening. Dr. Kulbhushan Sharma, National President for Independent Schools Association. Yamini Aiyar, President and Chief Executive of the Center for Policy Research, with us this evening. Mr. Yogendra Yadav, National President for Swaraj India, and Ashish Dhawan, Founder Chairman for Central Square Foundation, also with us right now. Let me see if I can actually first up go across to Dr. Ram Shankar Kuril. Dr. Kuril, good evening. Can you hear me?
Good evening. Good evening to all of you.
Thank you for being with us, Dr. Kuril. If you can help our viewers understand the larger vision, how do you see our education system change over the next few years if this policy is properly implemented?
Yes, 100% it will be changed. There is a 3 vision in National Education Policy 2020. We have taken 3 vision. Number 1, an educational system that contribute to an equitable and vibrant knowledge society by providing high quality education to all. That is the number 1 vision. And number 2, develops a deep sense of respect towards the fundamental rights, duties, and constitutional values, bonding with one's country, and a consequent awareness of the one's role and responsibilities in changing world. Number 3rd vision is instill skill values and dispositions that support responsible commitment to human rights, sustainable development, and living and global well-being, thereby reflecting a truly global citizen. So these are the 3 visions we have taken in National Education Policy 2020.
What do you think will be the benefit? Let's start with one of the biggest things, the benefit of breaking the structure. Actually, I wanted to specifically ask you about the new structure that is being proposed that will replace the 10+2 structure, Mr. Kuril.
Yes,
how does that help?
It will be replaced. Now it will be 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. 5 means we have observed that the brain of a child develops around 85 to 90% before the age of 6. So in the beginning itself, childhood care is to be taken care of. For that, we have made a 5 plus 3 plus 3. 5 means 3 years he has to play in the schools, nothing else. 2 in government system, first and second 2 years will be for the playing only, playing with the games and for developing the child brain. So in 5th year, he will cross only 2nd class. And then in 3 years, another 3 years, he will cross 5th class. Then plus 3 years, he will cross 8th class. And after 8th, 4 plus 4 means 12th class. And there will not be between barrier any in 10th and 12th class. So the student will pass from 8th to 12th by putting 4 years. And there will be facility of changing the subject in that way. If some candidate
Okay, Dr. Kuril, please, I request you to stay on with us as I bring in our other panelists as well. Ashish Dhawan, let's begin with you. Let's talk about this new structure and how do you see that really changing a student's school life and what he learns and how education is then imparted?
Yeah, I think, obviously the structure doesn't necessarily mean that we have, what students learn across these grades will still be fairly similar. And we hope that what this does is it brings a sharper focus, particularly on the early years and on foundational numeracy and literacy. I think the new education policy is a landmark document in that it calls out very clearly that we need a national mission focused on foundational numeracy and literacy, and that we need to significantly improve by 2025. So this is very tangible. It's in the near and medium term. that goals need to be defined, and that we need a monitoring framework. We have a separate National Assessment Center, PARAK, so that you have more reliable learning data coming out, both at the state level and at the center as well. So I think this first 5 years, as was mentioned earlier, are very, very critical in a child's life. And so paying greater attention to it, having a national mission, particularly focused on class 1, 2, and 3 in school, so that we can achieve, significant improvement. And then, by 5th grade is the sort of the last time by which children can attain these basic skills. So if you look at the World Bank report on learning poverty, it calls out that India has a 55% learning poverty, which means that at age 10 or class 5, 55% of children can't read basic 2nd or 3rd grade text. China is at sub 20%, Sri Lanka is at 15%. We clearly, in this 5 years, need to get the 55% down to 20%. So I think by breaking up the system, as opposed to you wait 10 years, you take a board exam, I think if you chunk it up, and at the end of each chunk, there's some kind of key stage exam or learning marker, I think we have a better sense of how children are progressing through each phase, and the objectives in each phase are also somewhat different.
Okay, so let's take that one by one. Just to reiterate, what both of our experts have said, this new structure, which then emphasizes on 5 years of foundation course, then 3 years of preparatory course, 3 years of middle stage education, then 4 years of higher secondary learning. That's how it's now being broken down, and that's the kind of then focused a way of imparting education and learning that will take place. Now, one very interesting thing that caught my attention was actually the plan to treat with the board exams. Now, Dr. Ramshankar Kuril, can you help us understand what's the idea there? Right now, board exams is such a grand event in the lives of our students. What is it that you're planning to change?
Just we wanted to reduce the pressure from the students at the beginning stage, at the age of in the class 10th class and 9th class. So he has got the flexibility. He will continue till 12th class, and there will be board examination. And in the examination, there will be common syllabus for our country, for common examination, similar syllabus, similar exam, similar evaluation system. So uniformity will be there in the entire country for 12th class examination. So he will be.
When you say uniformity, will that be across boards, between state and central boards?
Yes, all will be uniform. One board, one examination system, one syllabus, one evaluation system will be there for the entire country.
Okay, all right. That's very interesting. Yamini Aiyar, good evening to you. What is your view? Is this something that bodes well, a unified exam structure for across the country?
Begin with, it's important to acknowledge the fact that a serious attempt is being taken to rethink the board assessment structure itself. The shift away from rote learning towards a better system for assessment is really an important move in the right direction. All of us have been through that board examination. I still get nightmares of what that examination used to be. So I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. I think in terms of a common syllabus and a common examination, I'm not entirely convinced that commonality is necessary, but I do think that if we set very clear standards, that the structure of the board and the syllabus can meet to meet that standard is a more important place for us to be than achieve commonality that may cause a whole other set of challenges.
Okay, if you can just actually elaborate a little bit more on and those structures and streamlining those structures then to simplify the process. What is it that's missing in this proposal?
Well, I think, look, we're going to have to wait for the details. This proposal this is a broad policy. The details of how this has to be this has to unfold will really depend very much in the implementation. And I don't think we have enough information at this point to really pass any great judgment on that. So I would hold on on that. But I do think that it is important for us to have very clearly articulated learning goals. And when we say that the focus has to be on critical thinking, to be able to unpack that, to clearly identify what those are, and then allow a certain degree of flexibility in aligning the syllabus and in aligning the examination system to meet that. There is no one size fit all per se, but there certainly is a one size fit all set of outcomes that we want the education system to move towards.
So let me just pull out some of the details that we've managed to collate together as far as the board exam system is concerned, and the proposal. Of course, final details we will have to wait and see how it emerges, but that there will be more choice of subjects to the students. The idea, the focus, like Dr. Kulir was also mentioning, will be to enhance their core capacities, and the intention will also be to reduce, like I said, this memorizing kind of a business where all you're doing is actually rattamaring the system, not understanding, not really able to assimilate what you are being taught, but simply memorizing it for the heck of writing it. Months and months of coaching, that's what it largely does to a lot of students in our country, just makes it mechanical and robotic, and hopefully this system will change. We understand there will also be an option to take this exam twice. There will be a main exam and then an improvement exam. Various models have actually been proposed, like annual or a semester-based examination system, or a modular board examination system. These are the ones that have actually been proposed here. And there will also be a choice. The subjects themselves will be split into two. So there will be one standard and then a higher level. Now, of course, a lot of further deliberation will be required to finalize these from these proposals. What's your view, Dr. Kulbhushan Sharma? How should we go about changing our board examination system?
कि जो बोर्ड एग्जामिनेशन सिस्टम में जैसे कहा जा रहा है कि सारी कंट्री का सिलेबस एक होगा, सभी का एग्ज़ाम एक प्रकार का होगा, और एजुकेशन सिस्टम पूरा कंट्री में सिमिलर और एक ही तरह का होगा, हम इसका स्वागत करते हैं। ये एक बहुत सही कि एक ही प्रकार का एजुकेशन सिस्टम होना चाहिए और एक ही तरह का एवल्यूशन सिस्टम होना चाहिए, जिससे जो है सभी बच्चों को समान रूप से जो है उनका कंपटीशन हो सके, उनको जांचा जा सके, और उससे एक फायदा होगा कि हमारे बहुत सारे लोग जो है ट्रांसफरेबल जॉब करते हैं। तो अगर कोई आदमी दिल्ली से असम जाता है, सेम सिलेबस है, सेम तरह का सिस्टम है, तो उसको उस सिस्टम में एडजस्ट होने में कोई दिक्कत नहीं आएगी। और सेम अगर बोर्ड्स के पैटर्न्स होंगे तो इसका डेफिनेटली जो बेनिफिट जाएगा वो कंट्री के हर स्टूडेंट को जाएगा, उसको कहीं भी एडजस्ट करने में किसी प्रकार की दिक्कत आएगी। तो इसका बिल्कुल स्वागत किया जाना, ये बहुत ही सही स्टेप है कि इस तरह का सिस्टम होना चाहिए।
Let me also say good evening to Mr. Yogendra Yadav, who is joining us. Mr. Yadav, good evening to you. We are just breaking down the national education policy that's been released yesterday. And of course, it's exhaustive. And we're going topic by topic. Currently, we were talking about what's been proposed to revamp the entire board examination system. But your opening comments on what you think of this policy, and specifically about the proposals regarding board exams.
Tanvi, I think first of all we need to remember that this is a policy. Now, national education policy is a kind of a vision statement. It is not an operational policy. And as Yamini was saying, it all depends on how it is operationalized, because through the day we've had many people being very anxious, what's going to happen on this, what's going to happen on this. I just want everyone to remember that in the policy today doesn't mean anything happening tomorrow. The government has to decide, the central government in some cases and the state governments in some cases, they have to decide which portions of this policy they want to implement, when and how. And that is where everything would depend. So let us not read too much. Number two, I was surprised to hear Ramashankarji here saying that this would be uniform all over, because actually the policy doesn't say so, and rightly so. It speaks of common standards, which is of course necessary, but to have absolutely uniform syllabus and uniform everything and the same examination, at least I did not read that in the policy, and I tried to read it carefully. It's a 60-page document, so it can be read. And I thought it does not say so. What it says broadly on the question of examination, etc., is that we need to go beyond summative scores, which is to say, at the end of whole year, you have that one single examination that determines your fate. We need to move beyond that, which is, of course, common sense, which is a very sensible thing. On the whole, my sense about the policy is that actually it contains very many sensible suggestions. The apprehensions that someone like me had, that the BJP is bringing this policy, it could be saffronization, it could be obscurantism of various kinds, or it could mean retreat of the state. Fortunately, this policy is not about all that. So I find on balance this policy as a step forward. I'm obviously concerned, but that's something that we can probably come up later. I am concerned about what it has to say on equity or does not have to say on equity. I'm also concerned about commercialization and privatization dimension of what it says, but maybe we'll take it up later.
Okay, in fact, I also was a little surprised by the mention of, uniform board exams. Let me ask Dr. Ramshankar Kuril. Dr. Kuril, क्या आप इसको explain करना चाहेंगे? आपने कहा, you said there will be, a one common board exam across the country. What does that mean? Same format, similar system, or exact same to same?
Similar system. It will be a similar system for entire country. See, the basic structure, what the system in this policy has been proposed, and apprehension of Dr. Yadav, I appreciate his apprehension. And while making all these things in the discussion, there were 24 meetings and a long discussion on these issues which he is raising. I hope we have covered in the entire the apprehensions in our education policy. If you give me 5 minutes time, I can explain the policy about the policies, the things. What things have been taken, what are the precautions we have taken,
yes, please go
what
ahead.
are the things is going on. So see, I was discussing about the vision. 3 visions I have taken, we discussed, and we have taken 8 principles of national education policy. One is respect and diversity and local context. Second principle is equity and inclusion. Third one is community participation. And fourth one is use of technology. Fifth one is emphasize conceptual understanding. Sixth one is unique capabilities. Seventh one is critical thinking and creativity. And seventh one is continuous review. So we have taken 8 principles while formulating the this national education policy. As I have discussed, this universal access to early childhood care and education, it is very essential part. So a special attention has been taken in this process. Then ensuring universal access to education to all levels, multiple pathways, build the schools. We are aware that there is no basic infrastructure, required infrastructure available. If we go by Eastern UP to Kalahandi, there is a lot of problems. We have gone through these problems and taken into consideration all those things. And what is expected outcomes from this universalization of access, equity and inclusion. Out of school children, around 2 crores school children are out of schools nowadays. How to bring them back into the school? Around 2 crores people, these students are out of this. And fundamentally literary numerary system. So 21st century skill. school complexes, governance, language, common standards, all these things we have taken into consideration. And how children will learn, that we have also taken into consideration, that transforming curricular and pedagogy structure. Second year में क्या होगा, 2 years में, 10 years में, 4 years में, 3 years में, all these things we have taken into consideration and it is there in the report. Then the early childhood education, learning and formative years. So I am talking about only in the early child care education, then middle, then higher secondary. So the basic purpose has been to how to make a vibrant knowledge society from the very beginning itself. So we have made lot of number of other things we have discussed about reduction in curriculum. जो बस्ता बोझ जो students का जो reduction in curriculum, that we have also taken into consideration core essentials, critical thinking, interactive classes, experiential learning. All these things are being incorporated. Competency based on education, integration of subject, development of scientific temper. No, see, emphasis on digital literacy, promotion of multilingual teachings, and health checkups, reduce weight of school bags, mental and physical health and well-being, all these things have been taken into consideration. Innovative pedagogies, transforming teaching learning process, how the experiential learning, integrated pedagogy, promotion of peer tutorials, equal weightage, bagless days, use of integration of technology, and then similarly textbook with local content of the flavors. We have made the state to, there is in our country we have seen diversity. So similarly we have taken that also into consideration. India's future and India's leadership role in the upcoming field, computational thinking, mathematical thinking.
Right.
So many things.
Dr. Kulil, if I may just come in here and okay, if I may just come in here and we'll take it, segment by segment, so it's also easier for us to, have a discussion on each part that you're raising. And I must say, I wish we had bagless days in our time. It would have been so much more fun to travel to school without that amount of load. But it's good, and I thought even the part about use of technology is highly essential. Maybe we are behind time already on this, but we need to catch up as far as usage of technology is concerned. Mr. Yogendra Yadav, you wanted to make a point before I move on?
I just wanted to clarify that while Mr. Kulil was speaking, I checked up the actual document. It doesn't say anything as threatening and as ridiculous as that. It simply says something very limited. It says that there would be a National Assessment Center for School Education, which will be standard-setting body under the MHRD to fulfill basic objectives of setting norms, standards and guidelines for assessment and evaluation for all recognized school boards. So school boards will continue. They will have their separate exams as they should. There will be a centralized body which would help them in setting standards and standards of evaluation policy and so on, which looks like a reasonable thing to do. Doing one single examination throughout the country doesn't look like a very sensible thing for me to do.
Okay, let me also bring in another panelist, and if anybody else also has a view in it. Ashish, would you like to come in?
Yeah, so I think firstly, the board exam reform is a critical one because as we know, currently it's rote-based. If we were to change the concept, which is focused more on core concepts and on application of knowledge, that will have a massive trickle down into the way the curriculum is transacted in not only secondary school, but also in middle school. So I think it's a game changer if we can move in this direction. I know that CBSE, under the past chairperson and under the current chairperson, are already starting to move in this direction. And with the new set of standards coming in, which other states can follow, and if we have an outcome, it's sort of, learning outcomes framework of what students need to achieve, what the competencies are, what the standards are, and we are able to detail out the substandards. And other boards can follow that as well. My sense is that this will make a big difference and it can be achieved in the next 3 to 5 years. It doesn't require any additional money. and it will lighten the load for students because it will be low stakes. My other recommendation would be, in addition to doing this for the 10th and 12th boards, it's too late to find out in class 10 where children are. It is very important for us to have key stage exams. An exam possibly at the end of class 5, another one at the end of class 8, then class 10 and class 12. Key stages, all low stakes, all ones where the student gets feedback, where the schools know where they are, and ones that are not based on rote, but more on application and testing of core concepts.
Yamini Aiyar, go ahead, please. You wanted to add to this?
Yeah, I think if we were to just look at our school education system as it exists today, one of the big challenges that we confront is that the classroom has almost become a victim of the challenge of syllabus completion and pass percentages linked to our rote-based examination system. And that impacts how the teacher views the classroom. It impacts how the teacher wants to engage with children, because our classrooms also have children that have a very wide range of learning levels, and there's enough data to support that. And that fundamentally is the key reason why learning outcomes are a constant challenge in our schooling system. So I believe that a significant shift, as is being proposed here, in terms of what the focus of the assessment structure should look like, and emphasizing emphasizing standard setting and building a set of outcomes that schools and boards need to move towards, is a very, very important thing. And as Ashish said, it will have a significant trickle-down effect, both on how we are thinking about foundational learning and moving forward through the schooling system. And most importantly, it may finally free the teacher and free the classroom from this tyranny of syllabus completion and pass percentages, which is really, to my mind, the biggest challenge that has held back our schooling system. So I think that we need to really move.
Let me ask a follow-up question here. Yes. Let's look at the current system, practically speaking, what happens right now in board years or even preceding year. For many, in many states and cities, I see from 9th standard students start preparing for their 10th board exams and start going to coaching centers. This whole system that has been set up of going to coaching centers where they finish your syllabus in 2 months and then redo it and revise it again and again, and that kind of a system that has seeped into our culture right now. Do you think this policy addresses that to fix it?
Are you asking? So, look, like I said earlier, and Yogendraji also emphasized, let's remember this is a vision statement, and ultimately all vision statements fall on how that vision translates into implementation. I think as a vision statement, to really push our education system to tackle head-on 2 crucial challenges that the school system faces. One, the fact that we haven't been able to achieve basic foundational learning in this country, which is if your foundation is not strong, as the policy itself says, if the foundation is not strong, everything else that this policy suggests is not going to be valid or not going to help move and confront the greatest challenge that the Indian education system faces. And secondly, the vision that we need to move our education system away from this tyranny of rote learning towards an assessment, towards a system that actually privileges critical thinking, that privileges holistic learning in different aspects. So I think these are 2 very important vision statements. They are not new in any revolutionary sense of the term, but they are very critical. And for a policy document to state these upfront, I think is very important. It is now left to the policy makers and to the bureaucrats and everybody and the entire ecosystem to get to the drawing board and say, if this is my goal, what do I need to do to change my system? I have, through my research, spoken to many teachers, particularly in government schools across this country, and consistently been reminded by them of how much the focus of the classroom is on sticking to syllabus completion and sticking to and maximizing pass percentages at the cost of assessing the ability of students to actually comprehend and learn. And I think with these 2 vision statements, we are probably in a good place to start start moving along, thinking about what it requires to break this tyranny of the classroom.
Okay. I wanted one clarification from Dr. Kuril on another thing which seems to have become a bit of a controversy in many parts, and which is the argument for using regional language as a medium of instruction. Dr. Kuril, can you just clarify to us, are you suggesting that the regional language should be used across the board in public, private schools, everywhere as a medium of instruction till class 5th?
It should be mother tongue. It is mother tongue. But before that, I would like to come back to this reforms examination in grade 9 to 12, including board exams. We have made the provisions to make the board exam more easier, as they will test primarily core capabilities and competency. Bible model to explore annual and semester modular exams. Two parts of exams, objective types and descriptive types, will be there in the 9th to 12th classes. Guidelines will be prepared by NCERT in consultation with the State Council of SCERT, Board of Assessment, like that. So there should not be that much apprehension. There is a guideline that uniform system of all the state will be controlled by the National Education Commission, headed by the Prime Minister, and there will be a different model, not like in the present system of Ministry of HRD. It will be converted into a Ministry of Education, and it will be controlled, or it will be managed by a technical group, by the educationist, like Assistant Director General, Deputy Director General, then Director General, then System of like that. It will not be headed by the bureaucracy like Joint Secretary, Additional Secretary, and Secretary, like that. So there is a system is likely to be changed for the national education level, at national level also, and first time it is being taken care that including primary education will also be monitored from the national level. It will be given to the state education this commission, headed by the chief minister, and the concerned ministers will be the member. There will be 25 members committee and including the different agriculture minister, health minister, environment minister, agriculture minister. The concerned ministries controlling the education system in the respective field will be the part of that committee, that commission. So there should not be that much apprehension. Moreover, it's a large country. The guidelines and will be issued to all states to make the uniform system. And I hope it will be successful. And I would like to mention that this policy document is not only about the vision. We have also elaborated how it will be implemented, and it has also been mentioned that when it will be implemented, it is a time limit for everything. We have fixed first year में 2020, 2021, 22 में क्या होगा, 2023, 25 what will happen in 2029, 30, and what will happen in 2035 and 36, and finally by 2040. There is a target to achieve 100% education in 2035 to 2040.
Yes. No, I understand. And that's how I also started off this conversation, Dr. Kuril, by saying that this is obviously not something that will happen overnight. It will. These are proposals.
Regarding language.
But Dr. Kuril, can you please explain on the mother tongue? When you say it as a medium of instruction, is it just verbal teaching? Is it also in written? And how will it really work?
It will be a mother tongue because in our country we have tried in our education policy itself. Everybody has seen that we wanted to make the Hindi a compulsory language for entire country, because we expect, and we have seen that Rajbhasha and all these things, we are not able to achieve that target up till now, national language. So we wanted to make it compulsory for our entire country. But this was some reservation came while submitting the report itself. That reservation was from some states that there could not be compulsory mandatory the Hindi. So it was made again optional language. for some state. So we wanted that
No,
Tamil,
but it will be
Kannada,
mandatory.
Telugu should also be UP. Pardon?
Dr. Kuril, will it be mandatory? Will it be mandatory to use
Hello?
the mother tongue as a medium of instruction till standard 5th?
It will be mother tongue.
No, that makes no sense to me, Dr. Kuril. I don't understand this. What happens to people who are working for the central government, who are working for the central armed forces or in private sector, but are constantly, transferring or taking up jobs in different cities? How will imparting education in mother tongue, making it mandatory, help these people? What will they do? I went to 11 different schools in 8 different states.
You are saying up to 5th class, no, not up to 8th or up to 10th or 11th or 12th class. You are asking up to 5th only.
By then also people change, and by then also people end up changing 3 to 4 schools. How will they learn? Am I expected to then learn in Tamil and then in Kannada and then in Hindi and English?
Options are there. Options are there. There will be option of Hindi both. 3 language formula is functioning there, still there. Our existing system of 3 language formula will be there.
No, Dr. Kuril, can you just explain to this one more time to me? The existing system of 3 languages is for us to learn those languages. I am not saying we are averse to learning new languages. The part that I am asking you about is using mother tongue as a medium of instruction. How will a teacher impart the education? Will it be in Marathi in Maharashtra? Will she teach in Marathi in Maharashtra and in Tamil Nadu till standard 5th?
So, but who says that you don't speak in, don't teach in English or don't teach in Hindi? 3 languages.
So, what do you mean by using mother tongue as a medium of instruction?
Freedom has been given to states. They can go for mother tongue.
Okay.
There is a freedom.
Mr. Yogendra Yadav, is this a dangerous proposal, Mr. Yogendra Yadav? Any political party tomorrow looking to garner votes in the name of regionalism and mother tongue will come out with this rule? Then what happens to people who are in a transferable job?
Tanvi, let's first of all understand what the proposal is. And I really wish there was a better representation of what the Commission has said. I'm not from this government, and the last thing I would like to do is to offer arguments in favor of the government. But we are dealing with something very significant that deals with the future of our children. So it's only fair that I actually state what the policy has said. Probably the member here has not read the final version. It says very clearly that as far as possible, mother tongue / home language / local language will be the medium of instruction in the primary school. Now, what home language might mean can vary from people to people. So yes, it does say clearly that if you are in Maharashtra, not all over Maharashtra, but yes, if you are in Maharashtra and if you are in a Marathi-speaking area, then Marathi will be your medium of instruction, not only for government schools, also private schools. It clearly states so. And the second thing, there is nothing new about it. I don't know what the whole fuss is about. This is exactly what the 1968 policy said. This is exactly what the 1986 policy said. This was never implemented. I doubt if it will be implemented this time. But let me also say, this is exactly what every sensible student of education and knowledge and language has always said in the world. This kind of a barbarity of teaching students in a medium of instruction, which is other than the language they speak to their mother or at home, is something which no educational psychologist will ever recommend. This is elementary. This is basic. I'm astonished that we have debate on this in the country. Yes, there are special problems. problems of people who migrate from one place to the other. People who stay in Karnataka but whose mother tongue is Marathi for a very large number of them. Those who live in Bengal, their mother tongue is Oriya. Those who live in Orissa, mother tongue is Telugu. In Bangalore, so many people speak Telugu. Now, remember, we are speaking about primary schools. These are clusters, and in those clusters, they will have the option. When it comes to people with very rapidly transferable jobs, in those very unique situations, of course, they could all say that their home language is, let us say, English or Hindi or anything of that kind. Now, let us not begin by looking at exception and then ask the whole country to have a norm about it. If there are people who speak Hindi in Assam, we cannot have the entire policy of Assam framed on the basis of that. These are exceptions. Policy should allow for that. But I'm truly, truly astonished about such basic lack of information in our country. We Indians simply don't understand the distinction between two things. One is learning a language. Second is using a language as a medium of instruction. Learning English is absolutely vital. I would say mandatory. Whatever the misfortune of colonialism, today we happen to have English, which is an asset, which we should get all our children to learn from class 2, 3 onwards. But to use English as a medium of instruction, to my mind, it is cognitive and pedagogical barbarity, which you cannot imagine in any of the world except the colonized mind. In Britain, they have started teaching Mandarin for the last few years because people in Britain now feel that, okay, Chinese is going to be future, so let's learn Mandarin. Now, do you imagine anyone in London would therefore say, let us learn geography through Mandarin, let us learn science through Mandarin? No, they wouldn't do something as stupid as that. Only in India can we have arguments of this kind, which go against
Mr. Yogendra Yadav,
educational psychology.
Yes, but Mr. Yadav, there aren't too many other countries which have as diverse a language segment as we do. We have such a large number of different mother tongues, and we travel across the country, like you yourself have pointed out. It's not a very small exception we are talking about. What would you then suggest is a solution for these people?
Yes, number one, precisely because we have so many languages, therefore we need to think complex. Instead of saying, let us disable everyone, we should say, how do we enable everyone? And the simple solution is this. There are pockets in Bengal where Oriya is spoken. Of course, in those places, Oriya should be the medium of instruction. There are places in Karnataka where almost the entire district speaks Marathi. Of course, Marathi should be there, and the other way around. People in Maharashtra speak Kannada. So the moment you localize, and primary schools are very localized, and remember, the diversity in our country is clustered. And because it is clustered, because people in R.K. Puram, many of them speak Tamil, because in CR Park you get people who speak Bengali, because in Rajendra Nagar you would have people with more Punjabi, you can work out local solutions. And where these solutions are not available, in those and only in those cases, we should use English or Hindi or whichever works best.
Okay, Mr. Kulbhushan, do you have a view on this, Dr. Kulbhushan Sharma, कि local languages should become your mode of imparting the education?
जरूर यामिनी जी, मेरा बिल्कुल स्पष्ट कहना है कि ये चॉइस जो है पेरेंट्स और स्कूल्स के पास छोड़नी चाहिए कि मीडिया पर इंस्ट्रक्शन क्या होना चाहिए। आप बिल्कुल ये बात सही है कि अगर एक बच्चा यहाँ से तमिलनाडु जाता है या दूसरी स्टेट में जाता है, वहाँ मीडिया पर इंस्ट्रक्शन जो मदर टंग दूसरी है तो उसके लिए बहुत बड़ी प्रॉब्लम्स हैं। तो इसमें जो मीडियम ऑफ इंस्ट्रक्शन है ये पब्लिक के ऊपर और स्कूल्स के ऊपर इसकी चॉइस छोड़नी चाहिए कि वो आज बहुत सारे स्कूल ऐसे हैं नॉर्थ इंडिया में जिनका मीडियम ऑफ इंस्ट्रक्शन इंग्लिश है, तो अगर मदर टंग में कर दिया जाएगा तो उनके लिए भी एक प्रॉब्लम खड़ी होगी। तो इस पे चॉइस स्कूल्स पे और स्टेट्स पे और जो है पब्लिक पे छोड़नी चाहिए ताकि किसी को भी किसी प्रकार की परेशानी का सामना न करना पड़े।
जी, तो आप कह रहे हैं कि ये चॉइस बजाय कि स्टेट और ओवर आर्चिंग एक पॉलिसी बनाए, ये स्कूल पे और पेरेंट्स पे छोड़ देना चाहिए, विच प्रॉबली वुड बी ए मोर अंडरस्टैंडेबल थिंग टू डू. Let me also bring in Yamini Aiyar on this. Yamini Aiyar, the fact that Mr. Yogendra Yadav says this has always been there as part of policy but never been implemented. Do you agree with what he's saying? Perhaps it should be implemented. There is, quite a bit of a merit to the argument that it's easier for younger students to understand it if you teach them something in their own mother tongue.
I absolutely agree. I think there is, as Yogendra Yadav himself has said, every educationist will tell you this, especially at the primary level. Learning in the home language, in the mother tongue, enables better learning actually of a second and third language as you move along your learning trajectory. And this is something that has been in the policy discourse in India for many decades now. And there's nothing new here. I also think that there is a great value, just for the reasons that you yourself were saying, of the diversity of languages in India, for all Indians to have, all young Indians to have exposure to this diversity of languages. This is the way we will preserve the core culture of our country. But I think that there are two complexities here that are worth engaging with in terms of how we actually build on this principle. And the complexities are twofold. One, that there is a very strong parental demand for what is called English medium. And across the country, many states have been grappling with this and have announced policies to convert their primary schools into English medium schools, which I think is exactly the wrong thing to do. But it does create a complexity in how we design policy in a way that responds and engages with parents. And that also is actually, I think, an important component of the new education policy that we haven't discussed, which is its effort to try and bring in new ways of thinking of the schooling system, not just as a structure of the school, but also engaging communities and parents in the schooling system as well. And that will enable a much more effective conversation and responsive conversation about medium of instruction. Secondly, if you look at the reality of all our classrooms today, for the most part, a lot of it is actually, even in these so-called English medium schools, a lot of it is in mixed languages. You walk into to schools across the country, you'll find even in English medium schools, so-called, the teachers actually teaching children in the local language, because that's the language that children understand, and English sort of gets thrown in. So there is some complex reality in which we are teaching our students, which is a mixed language. And I do think that as we think about the challenges of teacher education, teacher training, nature of assessment, structure of learning, these realities also need to come into our policy debates. Ultimately, policies always get implemented in a real world, and in this real world, the reality is always much more complex. But as a vision and in principle, I actually do believe that home language, mother tongue, whatever term you want to use, for primary schools particularly, is important. There is enough evidence on the table. We know this. I think to preserve the diversity of this country, this is an extremely important vision, and we need to find sensible ways of arriving at that. There are some really good examples of schools that have done this, where in primary schools you teach in the so-called home language, mother tongue, and graduates over to English later very successfully. Let's learn from those models instead of stopping this debate and conversation.
Well, okay. On the contrary, I have actually seen some examples, but of course, they're not broad-based enough to perhaps present it as a fact of children who struggled when suddenly in 5th standard, when the syllabus gets exhaustive and large, and then you're asked to change your medium of instruction. I've also seen, as part of my own experience, of those who travel and go through different schools and different mediums of instruction, of the kind of impact that also has on children. So perhaps there has to be a comprehensive policy that ensures that each interest is looked after. And I don't have that kind of a faith in our state governments, where they would simply see this as a political tool if ever they need to pick it up and make it a mandatory rule, a blanket rule across the state. That becomes my biggest fear. As far as preserving the diversity of our country is concerned, by all means, let's learn 2 languages and 3 languages and learn a language which isn't our mother tongue in our schools, because mother tongue is something you're already going to be taught at your homes any which ways. Completely out of time, but here is my promise to our viewers that we're going to bring out more details from this policy, more interesting points of conversation, and get panelists like we did today, esteemed panelists and experts in this field, to talk about it and bring out various angles. A big thank you so much to all of those panelists who joined us this evening. Viewers, suffice to say, let me reiterate that, because so much is being talked about and written about the national education policy, the first one in 34 years. This is a vision document. You heard one of the committee members himself say it here on Urban Debate, that this is something that gets implemented in the next 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, all the way up to 2035 and 2040. So don't expect any changes overnight. This is a vision document with a series of proposals that will then have to be taken up with various departments for them to be implemented. Where will the money come from? How will that be implemented? What about the integration of the private schools and the regulatory framework for that? So many more talking points that we will bring out to you over the course of next few days. For now, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation.